Behavioral management. Without behavioral management, you have absolutely nothing. You can get nothing done. You waste your time. Kids are not paying attention, and it's a zoo. Example is I did dropout prevention nationally for 20 years. I worked in New Orleans, Virgin Islands, Texas, New York, various areas. And when there was poor classroom management, nothing got done. In New Orleans, I visited 2 classrooms. One classroom, these are people I worked with. One of them I'd worked with, one I hadn't. One of them was constantly yelling and screaming and telling kids, and it was a zoo. Kids were yelling out, getting out of their seats, throwing stuff. I walked to the next room and absolute attention. He had a behavioral management. There were consequences if you blurted out, and if you wasted time, and if you got so many points, you had to work at lunch. And on Fridays, he had Woody's Warriors, and they would watch a movie, a cool movie. And it was unbelievably effective. He got tons done. Having good behavioral management makes all the difference. Okay. Now, the basis of behavioral management is this transactional analysis. And that is this. And this actually is important in tutoring. There are 3 modes which we work from. We work from parent. Use your hand. Don't you know better than that? We work from adult. What's 2 plus 4? How should we handle that? And we work from child. Hey, let's have fun and have a game. The child also has 3 modes. Parent, adult, and child. Parent, adult, child. Now, teacher I observed would go to parent, and he'd go to parent double duty. He'd say, Tom, you didn't raise your hand. Do you realize if you don't raise your hand, that's rude? And you're rude to other students, they can't learn, and they're not going to learn, and that's your fault. You got to use your hand. So he would do the parent controls. You need to use your hand, which is parent. And then he gave a mini lecture. So the first thing I said, cut out the lecture. He says, well, that's what my dad did. That's right, you're in parent. The problem is with your in parent, you put the kid in child, and all their misbehaviors come out. This is what teachers don't realize. Stop it. How many people? What did I say? Bill, would you be quiet? By going in parent, you put the kid in child, and all their misbehaviors come. And that's what happened to that classroom. It was a zoo. And that's really the only tool teachers know is stop it. What did I say? How many times do I have to say that? That's parent. Okay. So I said, I want you out of parent to adult. And I want you to stay at the antecedent level always. You see, when you're at parent, you're responding to the behavior or the consequence. But if you're at the antecedent level, you are guiding the behavior before they do it. So he's doing things like, thank you for getting in the line straight. John, I appreciate you raising your hand. I really like the way Tom got right into his writing example. Isn't that great that Susie's there and she's trying this paragraph, which she didn't do before? Bob, thank you for sitting up. So he moved to antecedent. That put him in adult and adult, and the behavior dynamics of the whole classroom started to change. An observer noticed that, who didn't know we were doing this. She said he's just so much better. Now, occasionally you pop the child, and so I'm recommending with him for part of his behavior, he get a little basket and balls, and when the kids are a little feisty, I used to do this, I threw balls back, and kids get against the wall and shoot at the basket. I used to give quarters if they made it. So I'm bringing him a roll of quarters. And if they made it, they got a quarter. Kids love that. And then when we were done, I flicked the lights. Now, flicking the lights means go back to your desk, put your head down and meditate. Go back to your desk, put your head down and meditate. You won't believe how that'll help your class. because when they're wild, it's a procedure that changes set. Okay, so he did that immediate change. He said it was unbelievable. So he worked at the antecedent. Thank you for sitting up. I appreciate your hand, etc. Now, as soon as you give work, you go to the feistiest kid to his desk. It's called proximity. And you go sit his desk and somebody else's. If you got a wild character who has trouble, you go back to your own desk, bring him there, work with him, then leave him there, and he's in a form of timeout without realizing it, and you rove into class. So he's got this one feisty guy. I'm having him bring back to his desk, work with him, and then rove, and then come back and check with him. So that's proximity with a form of timeout. Okay. So he's using that, and that has worked. Now, his problem is he's got this wild class. This is helping a lot, but they're still interrupting and pretty wild. And he has them before a 15-minute break, or before lunch, or the end of the day. And I use the watch technique. Now, the watch technique I use with a severe behavior problem kid before lunch, class before, I mean severe, one severe stern school ever had. They were incredible. And I tried multiple techniques. None of them worked until I did the watch technique. All the watch technique is, he has 15-minute break afterwards. When he's interrupted, he doesn't say a word. He just looks at his watch and writes the amount of time they wasted. 13 seconds. Then he goes on, doesn't say a word. When he's interrupted again, he stops, writes the amount of time. What you're going to find is kids start correcting behavior. Shh, quiet. Because the whole class is affected. At the end of the period, okay, we have 30 seconds that were wasted. We got to make it up. Now, he has one kid who's never a problem, has never interrupted, and he's exempt from this, which I did. I've used everything I'm saying here, I've used. And I exempted 2 kids from this crazy class. And they want, well, why? What are you doing? And I said, well, they're never a problem. They never interrupt me. That's why. They all understood. They just didn't like it that I busted them. Okay. So now he's aware of the parent, child, adult. What he didn't realize, if kids are a child, it hooks your parent. Would you stop that? What you got to do when they're a child is go to adult. Okay, what are we supposed to be doing now? Bob, what are you supposed to be doing now? Asking questions, and then if they're still wild, flick the lights. Flicking the lights has saved me so many times. I use that for years. And his kids loved it. Now he's got 8th graders. And they got right into it. Okay. So I'm observing him Friday to see his use of these techniques, but already his observations were we need to fire him, till he got 8 call outs at the last teacher meeting, positive call outs, because he now is empowered. He knows how to control kids without going to parent. Now, another technique is when I give seat work, I always go to the feisty guy, but the kid who's struggling, I will become his secretary. So if it's a writing activity, I will come and say, dictate me the first couple sentences, and then I'll leave them and I'll go to the next kid. So I'll get them started. In math, if it's division, I'll go ahead and do the first problem, tell me what to do, and then I'll let them go. So I become their secretary to get them started. So the key on good disciplinary action is consistency, and stay an adult. If the child hooks you, try to get back to adult. Go to child and have fun with them. That's why we're using the baskets occasionally, where he'll throw the balls and then shoot at the basket. It's just fun. My kids love that. I had a feisty girl. I had to take over the room because this woman was literally run out of the classroom. So I had to take over her 3 classrooms in Denver. And they came in the afternoon after PE, and they were wild. And if I saw that, they didn't know when I did this because I didn't always throw. If I saw they were wild, I went with it and just threw the balls back. And they all knew what that meant. Put your back, shoot, and they loved it. And I'd shoot, give myself quarters. And then hit the lights, they'd go back, and then we change. So people have the wrong idea that you control discipline by your voice and, be nasty and that. It's a combination of using all these transactions that make it, but trying to stay more an adult. Now, when you have younger kids, I'll use the colored card system: green, yellow, orange, red. So these are on kids' desk. So if a child's acting up, I'll turn his card from green to yellow. That's caution. But if he acts again orange, he goes to timeout. And then red, his parents are called. So I'm just turning kids' cards over as I'm teaching. If a kid interrupts, I don't say a word. I just turn the card and say, use your hand. I just give them a comment. That's elementary, okay? There's a lot of different behavioral systems you can use. If the kids are really feisty, one day you can do 5 cards on the board and one has an X on it. And just say that when you pick the X, we're going to do an activity. This guy, he'd be shooting baskets. Others may be playing a game they like or whatever. So I say, but you have to be totally on task for like 5-10 minutes. So after 5-10 minutes, I say, Susie, pick a card. Number 2. Oh, it's an X. It's not an X. Too bad. Then we teach a little more. Bob, your turn. 5. Oh, not an X. Too bad. Let's keep going at it. One day nobody got it, but they kept trying. Then somebody picks it. I go right to the game. That's kind of a fun thing to do when I know the kids are going to be wild, like a Friday before vacation. Okay. So that's a general overview of, so let me review. We want to stay an adult, occasionally pop the child. Remember, the child can hook your parent. Then there's techniques for consistency that we use. And one is stay at the antecedent, correct behaviors by appreciate, thank you. I like the way John's doing this. Then vicinity, get near the child. If the child's a little wild, bring them back to your desk, leave them in row. You can have behavioral systems like the watch technique and the flick of the lights. Also, another technique to get their attention is say time, and students say time and raise their hand. Time, and they all go time. And that means be quiet. Time. I've used that a lot too. Okay, so questions on that?
When you kept talking about the basketball, are you at a gym? I'm confused.
No. You can get, for like $5, a little orange basket that goes on your door.
Okay.
And little orange balls.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just put a basket on my door and had these orange balls. And at times, again, kids, I also had a rule. If you ask for it, we don't do it. You ask for it, we don't do it. That was, so I'd have a kid ask, and the other kid say, shh, don't do that, okay? So it's kind of to me, it's the most important attribute before phonics. And phonics is useless if you don't have this. So this is the single most important. And that's why I really focused with this teacher on this, because he only knew how to do parent lectures, because that's what he was taught. So he put his whole class in child. Other questions? Okay. Valerie, does that help at all?
Yeah, there's just some good things.
Okay, great. Okay, clear that.
And I was thinking the basket shooting is like a brain break, right?
Yeah, it's like a brain break. It's a way I go to child. I do a lot of brain breaks for childs. I do like Alien, where you shake hands and the alien scratches your finger. You have to sit down. I have a whole slew of these. I do when I do reading workshops. I do it with teachers. In fact, I'll be doing like 15 of them in Detroit. They love them. It just really gets community going. So I would do these energizers as well. But the basket thing was more either to throw off speed or throw other things off, or If I had a class that I was really getting nothing done, this actually happened. This teacher just, the wild class I was telling you about was out of control that I had. This teacher just could not control them. I said, all right, the last 10 minutes, they can do this fun activity. But if they interrupt, just look at your watch, write the time, and you're going to subtract that from the activity. So if it was basket shooting, I might have 8 minutes. And then when they interrupt, I'd write down the time and I'd write down the time. And so now we have 6 minutes. It's when you are having trouble getting anything done with doing this in a fun activity, you actually can get a lot done for 40 minutes and have 8 minutes of still enjoyable time. So I'm a pragmatist. Not all kids you can do the 50 minutes.
Can I ask you one question, another question? I see we're almost out of time, but it has to do with classroom management. You talked about one class you had where you would do fast friends.
Yes. Now, fast friends worked real well in the classroom because it's something, well, that class had a 1 minute attention span, 1 minute. I'm serious. I'd talk, they were gone. So that took me weeks to figure out what to do with them. And I used a combination system where they needed concrete information. So we would do an energizer, brain break, in mid-class at 9:30. But if I was interrupted, I had these big algebra magnets that if I was interrupted or anything, I just put the magnet on the board and made a loud noise, boom. They lost a minute. It was put back a minute. And this was a wild class. And boom, the kids would say, sit down, Jake. Tom, raise your hand. I never said a word. I just went, boom. That worked all year. And then we do our brain break, okay? So those are effective, the brain breaks. Okay, go further with your question again.
The fast friends is when you have them couple up
right.
and
Right.
then
Now the
one's the
fast
teacher.
friends with that group, I would do that control to get fast friends working. Fast friends is where they alternate pointing to consonants and vowels and I move around the room. Then I put a word on the board and they alternate changing letters, saying. So one will make it, the other one will say it, the other one will make it, the other one will say it. And then we go to the book and they alternate reading words and then alternate reading sentences. So it started out alternating with, now the reason the sounds work so well is I could rove and just point randomly to the sounds and the two kids that are working in partners had to say them. Then I'd go to another. I'd always start with my difficult kids first to make sure their sounds were clean. And then when I had a word like chast and they could change letters, I would rove and check that. You just got to make sure they know like X is never, usually not at the beginning and certain things are not at the beginning. KN's not at the end. But I do that with that. And then with the words, I'd alternate, while they're reading the words, I'd alternate and point to some of the words they covered. And then the reading, I would listen to reading. It was real. I could do that a half hour a day with this severe attention problem kid. So I would have a lesson plan where I was going to be more directive. And as soon as I saw they were wild, I would change to this because this kept them totally engaged. And then I used that system. These guys had a 1 minute, the system with the bars and the energizer to get their attention. And that seemed to work. Combination of behavior with fast friends. Great.
You remind me of when I was teaching. At the end of the day, a lot of paper and pencil work. We would use just shooting into the basket, the waste basket, and fold all their paper back because that way we didn't have to buy the whole little thingy.
Yeah, that's what this guy's doing.
And they would go up and go like, "Oh, I missed! I got to do it again." It's like, okay, go. You know, it became a very positive sort of thing. It was chaos at the end because
it's fun.
Papers are flying everywhere, but at the end of the day, they cleaned it all up and it was fun.
You're a child. So it's fun. And then you just flick the lights and they get right out of child because that's kind of an adult thing. Great.
Is Fast Friends your thing, Steve? Fast Friends your program?
That's my thing. It's part of the program. And so They alternate pointing to sounds,
Mhm.
and I rove. They alternate, I give a word. By the way, it works well on the backboard. So I'll put like unjectable, and they can change one of them. So one will put ruptin, kid will go unruptable, one will put shun, unrupshun. Okay. So you can do front and back. And then they alternate reading words and then alternate reading sentences. I rove. I always go to the kids struggling first. So when they're reading, I can do pressure release as I'm roving. And I rove in front. So I'm doing pressure release with this kid and then this kid. I alternate back and forth. Yeah, it's a good classroom technique. Anything else? If not, going once, twice, 3 times. Great work with you.